Does lure color matter? Well, of course it does, Quion. And this is part 2 in our video series of us discussing that. And in this segment, we're going to discuss high energy colors. Now, what is a high energy color? Well, that just means a color that reflects light, like white chartreuses, versus a color that's darker that absorbs light. And that's a big difference right there. And we're going to talk about it now. Let's get to it. Welcome everybody to the second installment in our Does Lure Color Matter video series here. And in this video we're going to talk about the same thing we did in the first video, but instead of doing bass colors in our bass baits, we're going to do more of colors in our Mad Minnows, our high energy colors, light colors, right? Chartreuse, white, bright purples, those sort of colors. And we're going to see how they're going to look in clear water and in stained water, and of course in the sunlight and also in the shade. So y'all check it out. We're going to try to unlock some secrets and experiments, try to understand what the fish are thinking, but ultimately this video is so it can give you a good scope of what you're looking at when you're choosing tackle, browsing online, looking at the store, because where you're fishing and your water clarity is important to know, and this is going to help you out. So let's get at it.
So the colors we're going to do today is Opening Night, Salt and Pepper, Cocodrie Candy, Main Squeeze, and White Pearl. First up, we got White Pearl in the clear water in the sunlight. And as you can see, the White Pearl just really reflects vibrantly. Next, we have Salt and Pepper, silver with black and silver flakes. And in the sunlight, man, those silver flakes have a nice flash to them. Definitely looks like some sort of shad or a bait fish there. Next up, we have Cocodrie Candy, green on top, purple on the bottom. Let's see what it looks like in the sunlight. So the green kind of fades away, purple starts standing out, but ultimately it's still a vibrant color with the sunlight. Next, we have Opening Night, purple color here. As you can see, the purple is vibrant in that sunlight, and those silver flakes really have a nice reflection to them. Alright, now Main Squeeze. The chartreuse on the top is very bright, as you can see here, but we can still see that profile from the White Pearl bottom. Alright, now we're going to mimic what the stained water is going to look like with these colors. In the last video, we used actual dirt sediment, but this time we're going to use flour that you cook with to diffuse that light, which is exactly what dirt sediment does in the water anyway, except it's just a little bit easier. Alright, first up is White Pearl in the stained water and sunlight, and as you can see, it's hard to see. So as a control variable, we actually put this in our yard so we have a bottom that'll contrast just to help out. So in general, if you have a contrasting water bottom, then the White Pearl will pop out in stained water. Alright, now Salt and Pepper. In the stained water, the reflection of the flakes is kind of gone, but you can still see the silver profile of the body. Alright, now Cocodrie Candy. Well, ultimately we can still see some profile. It's still dissipated a bit. The purple is standing out, but the green color is gone. Opening Night. Alright, well, surprisingly enough, we actually have more of the profile popping out. We can't see the flakes reflecting, but we can still see the bait. Alright, Main Squeeze. We could see a little bit of the White Pearl, and the chartreuse isn't as bright, but ultimately you can kind of see an overall reflection of this bait. Alright, now we're going to put these baits in the shade and see what they look like. White Pearl in the shade, in the clear water. It's not as bright with the sunlight, not as vibrant, but you can ultimately make it out. For Salt and Pepper in the shade, now the silver flakes have kind of gone away. Now we're seeing more specks of the black flakes. Cocodrie Candy. The purple is standing out a lot more than the top part of the green, but the color is ultimately vibrant in the shade. Opening Night. Let's check it out. Alright, we're still seeing some silver flakes, and we're still getting the vibrance of the purple color. Main Squeeze. Alright, in the shade, it actually looks like the chartreuse is a lot brighter. And then the White Pearl is still there, but you can't see it as good. Alright, now that we've seen what they look like in the shade in clean water, we're going to add the flour so we could stain up our water. Alright, first up, white pearl. Not much to be seen here, but as a control, we're going to put it in our yard in the grass. And you can see it does help through the stained water. You can see it more with a contrasting bottom. Salt and pepper. Well, there's not really much to be seen anymore. Can't really see much of a profile or any flakes. Now, Cocodrie candy. Well, you can't really see a whole lot here. You can make a little bit of a color and a little bit of a profile, but ultimately it's very hard to be seen. Opening night. In the shade, in the stained water. Alright, here we can actually still make out of a profile and the color of the bait, but we just can't see much flake. Main squeeze, let's check it out. We could still see some chartreuse, but you can't make out a profile of the lure, so ultimately we're just seeing a bright color here.
Alright, we've got some pretty interesting results that we've learned from doing our experiment again here with these higher energy colors. And let's discuss it. Let's discuss if the fish are going to see it, and maybe why or why not we might choose to fish these colors in certain situations. So the first color on the list, in sunlight with clean water, white pearl. Now, would I fish it? Absolutely. Salt and pepper? Absolutely. I love the way that in the cleaner water, that salt and pepper, the silver flakes really popped out, and it gave this cool sheen that to me matches almost a majority of bait fish out there. Shad, pogie, that have that little bit of reflective look. Cocodrie candy, absolutely. Made the colors, everything pop out vibrantly and brilliantly. Opening night, I love opening night. I would definitely fish it. Sunny, clean water. Main squeeze, absolutely. The chartreuse really popped, and you can see that white pearl color in the bottom of it. And pretty much all of the colors in clean water with the sunlight, they all reflect, they all do what you want the color to do, and which is the most perfect scenario you can get. But we're never gonna get that scenario. 9 times out of 10, we won't have that scenario, but sometimes you might, and if you do, you're on a great fishery. Alright, now cloudy in clean water. So white pearl kind of seemed like it popped out a little more, like the color started to glow a little bit. And but would I fish it? Absolutely. Salt and pepper. Now what was different in cloudy in the clean water than with the sunlight, I did know salt and pepper had a little less of the reflection of the silver flakes, and it kind of made the black stand out a little more, but ultimately you could see the profile of the lure, very good. The silver was brought out more, the silver color. Cocodrie candy, the purple in there, the green, that definitely popped out. I would certainly fish it in the shade. Opening night, I really like the opening night's look. I fish opening night a lot, but in the shade, that purple really stood out. Main squeeze, the chartreuse actually seemed like it glowed a little more in that shade, which was pretty cool. Not so much the white pearl, but the chartreuse definitely, like it was a lot brighter, it seemed like, versus with the sunlight. So that was a very interesting look. All right, now let's get into our results when it comes to the stained water. White pearl, man, white pearl, even with the sunlight and the stained water, it's kind of a toss-up, and I'm going to put an X and a check, as it's kind of a toss-up. It's kind of up to you where you're fishing, make that decision. But a few things that we did notice, the white with the dirty water, with our experiment with kind of like letting the light reflect all around, we didn't see it that well. But if you're fishing against a bottom or water that can contrast really well, like a greenish type water, or just the bottom is maybe darker, dark sand, marsh mud, that sort of thing, it's going to contrast that white really well. So that's when I would fish it, versus if I was clear, maybe just a light sandy bottom, like a very white beach type bottom, I wouldn't fish it. So that's based on you, but that's what we came to in that experiment. Now, salt and pepper, it kind of lost the flakes, but the silver was still there. And again, on a contrast, I would fish salt and pepper just because the silver is a little bit darker than the white. So the profile was still there with the sunlight, but it was starting to go away a little bit. Now, Cocodrie Candy is one of our most popular colors. That one too, I'm gonna give it both an X and a check. Again, it's based on where you're fishing, but with the sunlight and the stain, we kind of lost about half of the bait, but we could see a bit of the purpleness in it. And so I believe, again, you kind of have a contrasty type bottom or watercolor, then it'll pop up really well. But just where things are lighter, very reflective, it's not gonna pop up well in water that's, you know, stained. Opening night, I would definitely fish it, even with the sunlight and the stained water in the sunlight, because as the purpleness of the bait just remained there, and it kind of made some vibrance, and it made the profile of the bait easy to see. You know, with the lack of sunlight through the stained water, the flakes kind of were hard to see, but overall the profile was there and it stood out, and it was visible. The bait was definitely visible. Main squeeze, I would fish it, but the white pearl started dissipating, but the chartreuse remained. You couldn't really see the profile of the lure, but you still had that chartreuse color, so it still made a visible color to the fish with the sunlight. And it's, to me, the action of the lure and everything you're gonna fish is gonna make that chartreuse still visible to where the fish can at least track it down and bite it. And something to think about that too is a lure that has a chartreuse tail, you know, stained water, clear water. If it has a chartreuse tail, that's the part of the bait that's really gonna be visible and the fish can hone in on it. All right, now let's talk about stained water with the cloud, overcast skies. White pearl. Again, it was, you know, it was getting hard to see with the sunlight, but in the shade, I would say no. You would need a very contrasty water for it to pop out a lot more. Salt and pepper, it just became hard to see, in my opinion, in general. So that wouldn't be the go-to color I would choose on a cloudy day in stained water. Cocodrie Candy, it just made it that much. It was already iffy here, and right there I'm just gonna exit out now. Opening night was a validating result to me, because when I started making lures, opening night was a favorite color of mine that I always found worked well in multitudes of conditions, in clear and stained water, and it was honestly my go-to color for a long time if I was going fish for speckled trout or redfish in any kind of bait. And so these results were validating to me that on a cloudy day in stained water, I would fish it, because in the video you can see that the purpleness of it got rid of the flakes and everything, but at least the purpleness and the profile was still there of the bait, and it was visible. And ultimately, the fish can still see it, and they can hone in on the bait. You know, whether you're fishing for a reaction lure, a reaction bite, or anything like that, the fish can still see that purpleness of the profile and the action of the bait. Maybe not very clear, but they can see it, and if they're feeding, it's something across their face that they can see, and they're gonna hone in on that. So opening night, I would definitely fish it stained water on a cloudy day. And main squeeze, unfortunately right here is where we started losing the chartreuse, the cloudiness in the stained water. The stain was already making it a little hard to see, but not too much, but then the cloudiness just kind of made it go away, and ultimately the white pearl was gone, and then the chartreuse on the top was it was kind of gone. It's kind of up in the air if you fish it, but ultimately it wouldn't be my go-to. So in the most variable condition here, if I were to choose any of these colors, the one that goes across the board, it seems like, was opening night. You know, it looks good and clean in cloudy or sunny water, but ultimately, even sunlight with sunlight and stained water, it pops out, but even in stained water in the shade, it still remains good enough for a fish to see it and hone in on it and ultimately bite it. So for me, since I fish opening night a lot, the results were validating, which is good. Now, hopefully you can take these results to apply that to your fishing, where you fish your body of water, if it's stained water, clear water, you name it. Take this information, apply it to the tackle you're gonna buy, and hopefully this kind of shortens up your cone of information there. Hopefully it leads to catching more fish for you. So I hope y'all enjoyed this as part 2 of our segment. We're gonna have some more segments in this series of Does Lure Color Matter? And next up we're gonna talk about matching the hatch while we're still applying what we've learned in part 1 and part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, now's a good time to check it out. And till next time, we're gonna keep on experimenting. Catch them on occasion.